Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Brookshire County in our coal mine that we built in the last video, and in this video we're going to focus on finally wrapping up this machines line with a train line that connects a lot of the industries that we've been building over the last few videos. Now there's been a little bit of a break between videos, but from now on we should be back to weekly videos of Transport Fever 2. So make sure that you guys stick around for those. And so let's get into covering what we're going to try to accomplish in this video. And as you can see here, we have our sawmill and our steel mill, both industries that we've recently set up, and they should be receiving their raw resources so that they're able to produce steel and planks respectively. And then the goal of that is to have this machines factory near Tacoma, and then this machines factory next to Pittsburgh both be active while being fueled by the same train line. Now a lot of this will be pretty straightforward, and I believe this train will be very profitable given that it will be able to make money in both directions of the line. However, the terrain is going to provide a very specific challenge, as especially getting up from the riverside to our steel mill is going to be a bit of a challenge, and then as well just covering this bumpy, hilly terrain can also pose some challenges as well. And then depending on how quickly we can accomplish all this, we may end up being able to start providing some resources to their endpoint. Most likely will either be in Tacoma or Pittsburgh, just so we can start to get some resources flowing through this line. So I think the easiest thing to do is to set up our train stations in each area. So I think let's start off down at this machines factory by Pittsburgh. Now this we're going to want to think a little carefully about, because there is also potential for a boat connection in the future. And so I think what we're going to do is have our machines factory along the hillside here. We'll have this road coming through, and then we'll have a train station and space for a future port sort of along the riverside here. So let's take a second to clean up this area, and then we'll be back once this machines factory is ready to be hooked up with tracks. Alright, and so something quick and simple like this I think will work out pretty well for us. So that'll be this station for the machines factory, and then coming over to the steel mill, this we'll have to think about where we want our train to come in from, because we do have our truck station here. Now what we could do is bring out this road and have this run along the backside here, which I think would be just fine with what we would be planning to do. So let's make sure we're going to make this all flat, so eventually we can just flatten out all this terrain, and then we'll just return this road back to there. And this allows us then to have our cargo station lined up perfectly with the rest of the industry and areas here. And now as for this sawmill, this is in a bit of a tricky area terrain-wise, so I'm not sure how exactly we're going to ultimately set this up. I think what might work best is setting our station along this road here, and then maybe we can bridge over this road here so we don't have to have a crossing anywhere along these routes. And so let's just try that and we'll see what we can get. Again, this is going to be a bit rough, but we'll have to come back through and clean it up. I think that will work out just fine. And then lastly, we have this machines factory over here, which is another one we'll have to come in and clean up. And then I think we'll be pretty set to start building some tracks. Alright, and so with this, I think we're all set up to start laying down some tracks. And so let's start off over here where it's probably going to be the hardest and work our way from this side all the way through to the Tacoma end of these tracks. Alright, so now we have our train line built that goes from machine factory to machine factory. The terrain was a bit more difficult than we were anticipating. I wasn't expecting this drop off to be as large as it was, but it ultimately ended up working out, and we didn't have to go with any extreme slopes across the whole set of tracks. The run between the steel mill and the sawmill was actually pretty hilly. We had to have a section of tunnel at one point just to get past a hill that we encountered. But other than that, the rest of this line I'm pretty happy with. And then of course coming back down to our steel mill by Pittsburgh, this is also sloped slightly so that we can lower our elevation all the way down to the river here. And so let's get a train set up, and I think for all of these resources, I'm pretty sure a flat car will work, especially with planks and steel. So let's just double check that as we come in and build a train. And so by the looks of it, we will most definitely be able to do steel and planks with just a flat car, so we don't have to worry about splitting the train into different cargo types. Alright, and so I think this is going to be our train. I believe this is this nickel plate 284 class S2 with a bunch of flat cars, enough for 360 capacity. So in the end, ideally that will be 180 steel and 180 planks per train. The power rating on it is pretty good, and its top speed on slopes is pretty good as well, especially considering we really only have low slopes across this whole line, so there should be no difficulty getting up to top speed besides what the track limits are themselves. And we'll start out with just one train for now, and we will get this started. Obviously this will start at our machines factory in Tacoma, and we'll come up to the sawmill, over to the steel mill, back down to the Pittsburgh train station, where then it will go back to the steel mill, the sawmill, and then start back over at the Tacoma machines factory. Now I want to make sure that we set this properly so that we aren't running into any issues with loading and unloading different resources. So we'll go through and set this all up at each station, and then when we come back we should be able to see our train starting to make its way around on this line. Alright, so here's our train on its way to its stations. We will let that go around, especially as resources start to build up, and then I think what we're going to do is try to just set up a really basic line coming from each machine's factory into each city, just so we can actually have a demand for these resources and we can get a rough idea of the kind of money we'll be able to get from these lines. And so to do this, it'll be just extremely basic truck station and then an unload stop in the nearest city. So here in Tacoma, we'll just find wherever machines are. It looks like there's already a truck stop nearby, so we'll just reuse that one. We'll have to find a road depot that we can use, which is all the way out here. We can then grab a few trucks, and I think we'll go with 10. That seems pretty low for a line of this distance, so it won't clog up too much if it doesn't end up working out. So those trucks should start to make their way around, and then over on the Pittsburgh end, we do already have a road connection into the city, so we just need to set up a truck station and then an unload stop somewhere in the city, which I think we will just use a separate truck stop just so we're not clogging this station anymore. And so we already have a road depot right here in Pittsburgh that we'll use, and we'll pretty much do the same thing. I think we'll get 10 trucks, maybe 12, because I think this one's a little bit longer. And these will then go from this truck station to this unload stop. Now, it's interesting that this line is actually choosing to take these small country roads around instead of hopping on the highway and taking a fast road into the city. But we don't have any on or off ramps in this area near Pittsburgh. So realistically, this is the shortest path. So sometime in the future when we end up expanding Pittsburgh, I think maybe if we get some sort of on and off ramps in this area so that maybe they come onto this road and that provides another outlet in and out of the city, I think that'll be really beneficial farther in the future, especially once we start to build up this line. And so we should start to see some of our resources building up on this train, and it looks like we can, as we're seeing a fair amount of planks and steel building up on these stations. And so we can see our first train is already almost at the steel mill, so that's exciting to see. We're not going to see a full load of resources coming out just yet, but I think we will maybe in a little bit once these industries start to pick up and we start to really start generating demand from these truck stations into the cities. Now ideally, I think this isn't sort of the end configuration that we want to go with. I think what we want to have happening in the future is maybe this truck line from the machines factory directly into Pittsburgh can stay, but I think we'd like to have a port here, or maybe even another set of train tracks come over into the food processing plant, where this can sort of act as a bit of a goods hub, where then we can have boats coming in and out to send these machines out to areas like Houston, Portland, Salt Lake City, because I believe these cities still don't get machines, or at least not easily. Let's double check in Houston. Yeah, Houston's getting machines, but I don't think they're getting them easily. I think those are coming from all the way across the map, and cities, especially such as Portland, are demanding far more than we can provide from that one area. And then same thing I think on the Tacoma end. I think ideally what we'd like to have is either a truck line, or potentially if we can hook up to this cargo train line and have this drop off machines at this train station, and then we can have a train pick up those machines and send them back to our cargo hub, wherever that is, over here by Roswell. And then this can have a bunch of access to machines, and that'll just further help with resource distribution across the map. And so I think over the next couple of videos we're going to really scale this up. I want this to be our main machines factory on the map. So these two factories here will probably end up either getting 2 or 3 of these industries in the area, or we might end up using Freestyle Industries if we feel like doing something a bit more custom that we can detail a bit more. But just to get a sense of the amount of resources I want coming in and out of this area, I think if we can get 2 or 3 machines factories maxed out at the end of each line, that would really serve us well for the whole map. And then with that, of course, all of these areas are going to have to produce their resources in order to keep up with that demand. We'll see if we can scale that up, but we might have to drag in some other industries. There's plenty of empty space here in the middle of the map that we could probably get another forest over in this area and a few more mines maybe across the base of these mountains here. But we have plenty of area to supply the steel mill and sawmill, and I'm really excited to see what we can pull out of this line. Alright, so here comes our first load of resources into our machines factories. This is very much not going to produce really any money. I'd be surprised if this train even made any sort of profit from this, but it'll be the beginning of something. And I think given that it was only about 1/5 full of resources and we were able to get that much money out of it, I think that's pretty promising for the future here. It does look like we're going to have to make some of our turnaround areas a little bit longer. So let's just fix that quick. And then I think that'll be a good stopping point for this video. So we'll go through, take a closer look at everything that we've built and done in this video. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some next steps and future projects. Alright, and now that we're back, let's talk about some next steps and future projects for this map. Obviously, we're going to be looking to scale this line up. That might not be the first thing that we do, but it will be somewhere on our priorities as we are getting stretched thin on machines across the map. But I think first what we're going to need to do is come back through some of our cities. Tacoma is a good example. I think we need to continue expanding our streets, give the city room to grow. We'll probably have to do that to a fair amount of cities across the map, just to give ourselves some time before we have to come back and look at them. But we can see areas like Roswell. Roswell's starting to have a lot of AI building on this little island out here. I think if we could maybe develop this into a bit more structured neighborhoods, that would be pretty cool, especially to see it being populated, since it seems like Roswell is ready to start expanding its borders. So maybe filling out this area out to the goods factory. There's plenty of things we can do here to help Roswell expand its population. And I think Pittsburgh is another good candidate to take a look at for expansion. I know it's not filling out too much in this area, but I think that's just because it's pretty far away from the city center, so whatever that imaginary border is that the city fills to populate just isn't reaching out there just yet. So as we talked about, having a connection to this highway might be pretty beneficial, and expanding sort of up into these hills would be pretty cool, and maybe even down this way following along the river. I think those are a lot of good potential areas for Pittsburgh to expand to. And then there's Houston, where we have a lot of these fun projects going on, such as this stadium and this hotel area, which is still on the list, but I think we have some other issues that we want to tackle across the map before we sort of have time to take a look at and build out some of these more fun areas that aren't directly tied to the core functions of the game. And so I think with that, that's going to be all for this video. We are back to weekly videos, so expect those again. But if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.